President Trump hosted the president of El Salvador at the White House today amid an ongoing legal fight over a Maryland man the administration admits was mistakenly deported and sent to a notorious prison in El Salvador. Late last week, the Supreme Court ordered the Trump administration to facilitate the return of Kilmar Brego Garcia to the United States. But the Department of Justice insists the federal courts lack the authority to make that demand. Sitting in the Oval Office today, President Bukele, who has emerged as a key ally in President Trump's deportation effort, said he will not release Abrego Garcia from El Salvador's mega prison.
The question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
And during that meeting, President Trump also took his mass deportation agenda one step further, suggesting he's looking at deporting American citizens who commit violent crimes.
We also have homegrown criminals that push people into subways, that hit elderly ladies on the back of the head with a baseball bat when they're not looking, that are absolute monsters. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country.
President Trump was talking about so-called homegrown terrorists. Do you think the president is actually realistically considering deporting American citizens here?
Well, I just spent the last couple of hours talking to legal experts on that very issue, and, you know, it's pretty clear that he can't do this under existing law. Mm-hmm. You know, the whole immigration laws, when they talk about deporting people, they're not talking about U.S. citizens, right? They're talking about immigrants who don't have legal status in the U.S., and you'd have to completely rewrite all the laws and also raise a whole bunch of constitutional questions for that to ever happen.
Lawrence, I want to play some of what Stephen Miller, Deputy Chief of Staff at the White House, said earlier today in the Oval Office. Let's listen.
The Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13.
And we should know that the administration has not provided any real evidence that Abrego Garcia is a member of MS-13. His family denies it. There was an immigration judge that said he may have been affiliated with it several years ago, but that was based on one allegation. Point is, what do you make of the administration on how they are interpreting the Supreme Court ruling? They just said 9-0 in their favor.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's a bit more nuanced than that. Mm-hmm. The decision, we think, is unanimous. The court didn't actually say what the vote was. Mm-hmm. The court said very clearly that, you know, they accepted the idea that he was wrongly deported to El Salvador, which everyone's sort of acknowledged until today. Mm-hmm. The court also said that the judge was correct to say that the U.S. government should try to make efforts to bring him back, to facilitate his return. The point that Stephen Miller's focusing on is the other part of the ruling, which says, you know, that the courts can't impose upon the president's powers to conduct foreign policy, which is a core presidential power. And that's what he's focusing on, in saying that they're kind of throwing up their hands and saying they can't do anything. But, you know, they're basically trying to drive a truck through the gap that the Supreme Court left.
So what does happen now? The administration and President Trump today, you know, he keeps saying that he respects the Supreme Court. They're not saying they're going to defy the Supreme Court, but they keep making these interpretations that appear, at least some legal experts, the ones that I've talked to and you've talked to, they appear to, you know, have said this. Where does this go from here?
Well, the question, well, it's going to continue in the district court, and the judge, who has been pretty strong on this against the government, you know, can obviously, if she thinks they're defying court orders, she can try to do something about that. But of course, the case could end up back at the Supreme Court at some point, and then the justices could, if they want to, kind of push back against what the government's doing. But so far, you know, with all the cases that have come up to the Supreme Court so far involving the Trump administration, they seem very reluctant to confront him head on.
Lawrence Hurley, our Supreme Court reporter. Thank you so much, Lawrence. Really do appreciate your time.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.